Greetings, Race community. Brent coming in live with today's guest, Kimberly Russell, who serves as Vice President for University Advancement at Texas Woman's University. Welcome, Kimberly.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, as we were just catching up on briefly before we went live, you've got a very unique perspective to bring to the Raise podcast, given the institutions that you've worked with in the past and some of the unique areas of focus. But before we get to all of that, I want to better understand your own higher education journey. So take me back to high school. Who was that, Kimberly? Where was she? And what led her to UT at Tyler?
Well, I grew up in East Texas. I finished high school in Longview, Texas. And so I wanted to stay close to home. It was actually the most affordable option. So UT Tyler was the pathway. Right before I went to UT Tyler, though, I did do my first 2 years at a place called LeTourneau University, which is also on my resume. It was one of my first jobs in higher education and in university advancement. So that's where I learned the whole profession.
Wait, tell me more about that. How'd you get exposure to the profession there?
Well, it was great. So I was working on my doctoral degree at University of North Texas, and I took a class on resource development. And in that class was the vice president for student affairs at the time at LeTourneau University. And so I met him for the first time and learned about what it meant to fundraise for a university. And so one thing led to another, and I ended up doing an internship with them and then establishing their Office of Corporate and Foundation Relations. So that was my very first job in higher education, and I absolutely loved it. I spent 5 years working with primarily the president, the vice president, and then faculty members who were involved in engineering programs, either biomedical, welding engineering, mechanical, and electrical engineering, to receive their first grants, external grants from state and federal agencies, as well as private foundations.
Well, it sounds like the decision to attend North Texas was pretty life-changing, and rarely do people actually kind of get a job by way of classroom instruction. I mean, that's pretty direct.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. And I had absolutely no idea. It was just happenstance. And so, and really happenstance into that particular course. Wasn't even sure what the course was about. And so it was really my first connection to advancement work.
And so then you are very early in your career, without much experience, tasked with standing up a corporate and foundation relations program, which is not the most intuitive thing to do. So you must have had some good mentorship or guidance or partnership to be able to pull that off.
I did. I worked for a vice president who had quite a few years of experience, and a president, an individual by the name of Bud Austin, who was president at the time. He was president.
I mean, is there a more Texas name than Bud Austin? Are you serious?
That's true. He was my first mentor, actually, and did just a phenomenal job taking a very small institution with less than 1,000 students to about 4,000 students by the time he left. We did our first campaign. It was like a $26 million campaign for a new engineering facility and a couple of other facilities on the campus. And so it was a great first experience. Really had an enjoyable time there.
And I think, to work with a president, and I wasn't familiar with Bud until just now, but to be a part of a growth story, there aren't that many growth stories in higher education. It's a mature market. If anything, there are, fewer institutions, kind of one by one as the years go on. But then you hear these occasional stories where somebody takes an institution from 1,000 to 4,000, and it just sounds like so counter to some of the narrative that we hear right now. What stood out to you about either the leadership or the vision or the game plan? Where did those kids come from? What were they doing otherwise? I mean, I'm just curious, how you were able to pull that off as a team.
Yeah, it was a really unusual institution. So it was a small private. with a Christian focus. But it really was national in perspective, in that they had programs like an aviation program, aeronautical sciences. So they taught people how to become pilots first, not just for commercial, but to become missionaries in other countries. So they had sort of a global perspective. And so students came from really across the country to train there. It was a small private, felt like a liberal arts college, but it was STEM focused. It was engineering focused. And that's what made it different.
Very
Yeah. And
cool.
then later they added graduate school, became a university, and all of that. So.
And then tell me about the opportunity to join Tyler Junior College.
Yeah.
You had a very unique run there, and that, getting beyond 15 years in any institution is increasingly rare in this sector. And so you wouldn't have done that if you didn't really believe in the mission and have some real success there. So tell me about how the opportunity surfaced, where you started, and then kind of what stood out about that part of your career.
So through a lot of my community service work in Longview, I had an opportunity to serve on many different boards, even, early in my career, and met the president of Kilgore College. His name is Bill Holda. He had heard about the position that was becoming available in Tyler at Tyler Junior College. And I really never thought about working at a 2-year institution. This was my first, foray into university advancement. I really liked it. So I wasn't really sure what to do with that information, but eventually he convinced me, hey, you really need to look at this. Tyler Junior College is really different when it comes to 2-year institutions. And so I did. And I met another mentor, Bill Crow, who was the president at the time. And it was just a phenomenal experience. So Tyler is a little bit different than most community colleges in that it's not taking in a super large area district. They have about 12,000 students, primarily focused on the East Texas region. But it felt like a 4-year institution in a little 2-year nutshell. It encompassed all kinds of sports activities, had an incredible performing arts program, marching band, a lot of music talent there. And so we had an opportunity, which was really cool, to build, from the bottom up. Our little foundation was worth maybe $5 million. And the person who had been in charge of that, his name was Pinky Baker, a long time.
Pinky Baker. I mean, you've got the best names of people you've worked with.
Yeah. Well, his family was from the region, and he is the one who founded that foundation at that college back in the, I don't know, probably it came to life in the early 80s. And so I had that strong foundation, and we were able to just, begin to hire the frontline development officers. We developed a really robust alumni program, which is unusual for a 2-year institution. And so, and then, being from the region, kind of getting really involved in the Tyler and East Texas community, had an opportunity to really grow that foundation into just over 50 million before I left. Right. And today that foundation's worth now just over 100 million. So they really have done well.
And so my question is, when you arrive in that context, there's not a mature history and, decades of data that you can mine probably to just start building the giving pyramid. And my understanding is oftentimes in the 2-year context, actually the corporate and foundation intersection can be really important. And so, just tell me about, where did you start? I mean, how do you even decide who your constituency is in that context, where it might not just be pull me the list of alumni and let's sort them by, wealth and start chasing people down. And so where do you start?
So we really started with our foundation board, and that board was large enough. There were about 30 to 35 individuals from the community that were really became even more active with that board. And then really looking at workforce development and the economic impact of the college on that county and in that really region of the state. And then that's where our philanthropy started. So, like you said,
I ask, like, why did those board members, right, who are, I'm sure, getting pulled in different directions and being solicited potentially in a variety of different causes, why did they buy in?
well, many of them were actually alums. So that institution was one of the early community colleges in the state of Texas. It was founded in 1926. So there were many, in particular women who didn't maybe go off to University of Texas right away. They did their first 2 years at Tyler. So we had a lot of local individuals who had attended Tyler, and then went off to their 4-year institution somewhere else in the state later. So they had a connection both to us and to their 4-year. But their commitment to the community and into developing that workforce, their commitment to philanthropy in Tyler itself was super strong, stronger than in many other communities. It's really a unique town. So we have that opportunity. We have that little, that foundation. And then through our development of alumni relations, we began to work with other alums in the area and all of that. So, and we, East Texas is the home to a lot of the oil and gas industry. And so some of our historic families and community members were very successful in that. And so they really helped us and invested in all of higher education in that community, not just Tyler Junior College, but also University of Texas at Tyler. And that regional hospital system was a regional hub for healthcare.
I mean, it's an amazing story, and thank you for giving us a window. And I guess probably one of the main nuance there being, I feel like oftentimes I'm hearing about the much younger community college where they're they're growing really fast, but you had both the growth but also a history that is somewhat unique within the 2-year college category.
Yes. And then that continued to evolve. It didn't just stagnate. I mean, we were the first 2-year institution in the state of Texas to begin to offer a promise program. I mean, those are all over the country now, but we with the help of an investor from the community and a person who was the owner and founder of a local bank, took interest in his community and began that first promise program. And wow, it's been so incredibly successful. And then to see it spring up in so many different communities across the state, it's just incredible.
Very cool. So very strong Texas roots and Texas experiences. And at some point you had to look across the border and maybe consider a new opportunity. So tell me what led to the chancellor opportunity at LSU Eunice.
Well, it was really interesting. I just felt like I love higher education. I loved all the work I was doing in university advancement, but felt like, hey, I think I can do more. I'd like to try something else. And my daughter went off to college. She went off to Baylor University, and I thought, well, this is my opportunity to maybe put my toe in the water and see what leadership is all about. And so this opportunity came available in Louisiana. I grew up in Longview, which is very close to Shreveport, spent a lot of time in the Shreveport area as well. But this was South Louisiana, so it was very, very different in a very rural community. A lot of fun. I had just a wonderful time getting to know the people. The work ethic of the students was just absolutely incredible. I can't tell you, we were sort of a feeder institution for the Baton Rouge campus. Located about an hour and 15 minutes, outside of Baton Rouge. And so a lot of our students would come to us first. It was local. It was less expensive. They could get that first 2 years in at our institution, earn an associate degree, and then transfer right on into their program at Baton Rouge. We also had healthcare, so we had nursing and all of those allied health related fields as well. And so took those to some expanded those to some additional cities, and we're in just outside of Eunice and Lafayette. And so I had a chance to grow that institution to about 3,200 students. When I started, we were at about 2,500. So I spent a lot of time, I think university advancement work is a lot like enrollment management, a lot of similarities there. And so took a lot of the tools that we use in advancement to recruit students and to really get the word out. And so I think that really helped us.
Tell me more about that, because I'm really fascinated by the topic. I just interviewed and we just recorded yesterday, so it'll probably be released at a similar time as this conversation. A woman named Mo Cotton Kelly, who is the COO at the UConn Foundation, but she grew up in the enrollment world at Bowling Green State, which was her alma mater. And we were talking a lot about the similarities and differences between enrollment and advancement. And so when you talk about, like, when you think about the ingredients that led to that growth that you experienced, and it sounds like multiple instances in your career, what aspects do you think are most applicable to improving advancement outcomes as well?
I think it's the relationship building and it's the outreach and the continuing relationship or the stewardship of those relationships. Much like we do in advancement with our donors and prospective donors, the same concepts really apply. At LSU, we utilize that in developing relationships with school districts, for example, and with school personnel, with counselors, with principals, with superintendents, and being out and being seen and talking to those individuals so that they understand what programs your institution offers and how can you partner. We created an early college academy right there on the Eunice campus for students who were from the surrounding high schools and maybe didn't have adequate facilities or access to certain AP classes or access to STEM, majors. And so we brought those students in. They matriculated with our own native students and did amazingly well. So that at the end of 2 years, they could graduate from LSUE with a degree and also from their respective high schools. So that was new. It was kind of something different. They hadn't done that too much in Louisiana with the 2-year system, which was separate from the LSU system. There were four systems.
So essentially, like co-packaging a high school diploma with an associate's degree or whatever
Yes.
Wow, very,
And that's done a lot in Texas. That's huge.
Yeah.
It's been around a long time, say 15, 20 years, but it was something unique and that they didn't have. And so, we sort of put all those tools together and offered that, and we seem to grow.
And when you think about that growth, a couple hundred, incremental students per year, which is really material when you think about the kind of fixed costs that go into a university. Do you think those incremental students were you convincing them to go to LSU Eunice instead of somewhere else? Like, were you just competing better with other options? Or do you think it was more inspiring kids who otherwise would not have gone maybe anywhere to go? Do you know? Are you able to know?
I think it was probably a little bit of both. I think it is inspiring some who probably didn't think they wanted to go. Higher education, we're seeing across the country that about 60% of students are female, 60 and versus say 40% are male. In that particular region of the country, I would say 70% of the students were female. And the reason is because of that oil and gas industry and the offshore work that occurs in that industry. The male students, it was difficult to convince them to go and obtain any sort of post-secondary credential, right? Because they could immediately leave high school and have a well-paying job. The issue was, it's in some cases it's dangerous work. It's not sustainable later in life, and so to convince them to come to a place like, LSUE, that they could learn a trade, they could also do the first 2 years of a baccalaureate degree, sometimes was difficult. And so I think we just had to get that message out. And so we did. So we did attract some of those students and additional ones that we would have already naturally had come to our institution. So.
Well, I've never been to Eunice, but longer time listeners of the Raise podcast might recall that for about 10 months during the pandemic, my family and I we spent that time on the road in an RV with our three little kids traveling the whole
Wow.
country. And we did spend one night in Breaux Bridge, Louisiana at a alligator camp or something like that. I
That's
don't know
great.
what the appropriate name was, but we got a little bayou action, I guess, is what I would say on that trip. And
That's super.
the alligators did not disappoint. But you had that experience, and then had the opportunity to join Texas Women's University. Now almost coming up on 5 years. I guess this year will be 5 years, and very different kind of mission and focus to what you have described so far on your journey, but similar in the sense that there is a really specific and I think differentiated mission and focus. And so tell me about what led to the opportunity. Did you know somebody there? Were you recruited? Did it just sort of happen? And what ultimately inspired you to accept the opportunity?
So I was recruited. It was through a search firm, and I was really interested because there aren't too many opportunities in the Dallas Fort Worth region, right? At that level, and thinking about women in particular, women's education. And I had 2 degrees from University of North Texas, so I was very familiar with Denton. And as a student there, I used to study at Texas Women's University in their library. They had a beautiful facility, and it was always very quiet and just a great setting. And I remembered that, that experience. And so that's what really piqued my interest, in even looking, and really had a wonderful interview experience, got to meet a lot of faculty and staff, and the chancellor, Corrine Phaeton, who's just been phenomenal to work with. And then the mission, knowing that we are educating, about 90% of our students are still women, and a diverse group of women. We are majority minority institution. We're a Hispanic serving institution. It's just every day is a new day, and it's just a wonderful experience. And we're providing social mobility for a group of people who sometimes struggle in larger settings or in larger institutions. And so we can provide that real one-on-one nurturing environment. And that's what makes it really special.
No, I mean, it really must. And I'm curious, when you think about those stories, if there are specific examples that really stand out to you, but also how do you amplify that message to the donor community? And is the donor community the alumni community, or kind of what is the constituency there? But it does seem like you all must be sort of churning out those life-changing stories on a almost daily basis.
Yes, it's really an incredible story. So the state of Texas really had foresight when they founded Texas Women's in 1901. In 2026, we'll celebrate our 125th anniversary. So it has been around a long time. And if you can imagine, women who graduated back in the, 40s or 50s or 60s, those classes of women, I mean, they're independent, unbelievable accomplishments, right? And many times in other communities and other states, wouldn't have had an affordable opportunity to attend, a 4-year university or a 4-year institution. So we do have some incredible stories, and that journey just really has continued throughout as we've grown and expanded in other fields. Many of our graduates go on into healthcare is probably our number one field, with nursing and occupational therapy, physical therapy, all of that through the PhD level. And it's just incredible, the number of women that come out of these programs. And I mean, it's not life-changing just for them. It's life-changing for their families, for their children and their grandchildren. So it's amazing. It's wonderful work. I'm excited to do it, and have had some great success already. So we're really excited about the future here.
And when you think about that success to date, what lessons learned, what's applicable, what's maybe really specific to the opportunity? I mean, for other folks listening, what are one or two ideas that maybe have been effective for you that could be borrowed?
Well, when you think about our student population, planned giving plays a much more significant role, or a major role, I suppose, in the whole mix of fundraising. We have so many women who, one, have either outlived a spouse, or maybe have not had children. They've had a career, and so they're looking for a place to pay it forward, to return that investment. And it's interesting that nearly 70% of our donors are our alumni. So we have a very strong affinity for the university, and they want to give back, and they want to invest in the future, and in the future of women's education. I think it's that important. So that's what's different, I think, about an institution like ours.
And so when you reflect on the last 4 or 5 years, are there any specific donor stories that stand out, or maybe planned gifts that are inspired that very well could have not happened if the right
Oh, for
kind of,
sure.
yeah, I mean, just tell me about some that maybe stand out, because I'm sure part of it is also building momentum and showing the team how much more potential there is, and then trying to repeat over and over what really works.
Right. So I think one great story, and this is true for any institution, not just a women focused institution, but the relationships that our faculty or our deans or leadership, academic leadership, have with people that they work with in research, or at conferences, or colleagues that they co-author papers with, for example, can lead to gifts, can lead to further partnerships and relationships with the university. And one such thing happened back in 2016 with a man by the name of Dr. Richard Woodcock. Dr. Woodcock had a long time relationship with a psychology professor here, Dr. Dan Miller. They co-published many times. And Dr. Woodcock developed a relationship with this faculty member, and decided that Texas Women's was going to be the home for the Woodcock Institute for neurocognitive research. Dr. Woodcock invented, or was co-inventor of the Woodcock-Johnson cognitive test for psychological abilities, intellectual abilities. He's just an unbelievable giant in the field of psychological testing, and decided that Texas Women's University was a place where he would like to have his institute. And so over time, since then, and through some great partnerships with his foundation, and with his gifting of royalties and intellectual property rights, he's made over a $25 million investment in the last less than 8 years with his affiliation with the university. So I think it's just a reminder that whatever relationships your faculty may have with colleagues or others, it could certainly lead to something as transformational as a gift like this was for Texas Women's.
And tell me more about, within that 70% donor base that comes from the alumni community, how are you surfacing the planned gifts? I mean, are there strategies or tactics, or what is the process to do that? Because my understanding is that oftentimes it can be that sort of consistent, maybe relatively modest supporter that, until they're really asked, maybe never even thought about including, your institution in their estate plan, for example. And so how do you but at the same time, it's hard to go be really personalized with every $100 donor. And, we're working on ways to improve that, but how do you
We are.
Exactly.
So, right now, obviously that's a lot of work that our frontline fundraisers do, is we do a lot of qualifying. This institution, although it has a very long history, it doesn't have a long and strong history of philanthropic support. in particular from its alumni base. So we have spent a lot of time in the last 4 or 5 years developing relationships and re-engaging our alumni base. And I think that's really important. And then when they begin to hear stories of one another as they make investments into the institution, it does inspire others to come forward and say, hey, I think I can do that. I think I can also be a part of the society or whatever. So, I think continuing the stewardship and continuing to tell the stories does inspire change, especially with our alumni, for sure.
Love it.
Yeah,
And
and one of our largest single gifts to the institution occurred in 2018, and it was from an alum. Her name is Mary Stanton. She obtained a business degree from Texas Women's University. She and her husband did very well in as entrepreneurs, and she made a $10 million gift, an investment, into the future of the university, and it went directly into a student life arena. She really wanted to see students living and learning on the campus in state-of-the-art facilities. And so she named a brand new 865-bed residential complex here on the Denton campus. And that's made a difference, and it's inspired others, certainly.
love that.
Yeah.
Where are you kind of in the context of the organization? Is there a campaign happening, or, there's usually one either being or in the midst or just finished or being planned. So I don't know, what's the state of affairs there?
Yes. So we are in the midst of the quiet phase of the campaign. We do intend to launch publicly this fall. So that will be exciting. In celebration, of course, of our 125th anniversary in 2026.
And so what's the vision for that? Whatever you're able to share kind of publicly at this point, kind of what are the primary objectives? I'm sure there's a dollar goal, but maybe even beyond that, if
right. So our dollar goal is 125 million. It will be the first comprehensive campaign that we've had.
Wow.
We have a couple of capital projects. One is a new nursing and health sciences facility for the Denton campus. It's a $100 million project. It's a kind of public-private that partly the state funds, and then we have private gifts that will come in and help. But also really attracting and retaining talented faculty. I think that's so important for institutions like ours. We're comprehensive, we're regional. So the strength of our programs are really in our faculty. And so naming endowments like professorships, chairs, deanships. Our campuses, we were just named 2 years ago at the last legislative session in Texas. We are now the Texas Women's University system. We're the 7th system in the state of Texas. And so in the next 5 years, our campuses in Dallas and Houston will become independent. Those are health science centers serving the healthcare communities in both of those medical districts, one near UT Southwestern in Dallas and the other in Houston, right in the heart of the medical center. In fact, we share a parking garage with Houston Methodist Hospital.
Do you have peers or kind of friends who sit in advancement leadership roles that you're able to collaborate with, or who are kind of some of, I don't know, other folks that you turn to for advice, formally, informally?
I have a lot of peers, especially in Texas.
Yeah.
Certainly people I've worked with in the past, former presidents of the colleges, especially at Tyler. Like I said, Dr. Bill Crow, Dr. Juan Mejia, who is now the president there. Others who have been in the profession a long time in advancement. One comes to mind is Sue Kubik, who worked for Northampton Community College in Pennsylvania, and was just a really wonderful mentor to me when I first started in the profession. Mm-hmm. She has since retired. Her husband also has retired from higher education, but just outstanding individual, and really helped with my relationships in case, actually. Got
it. Tell me about your team. What's going on as you ramp for this 125th sort of moment? Are there open positions? Like what should people know about? Yeah.
We do have some open positions, and if you are interested and are passionate about higher education and about furthering women's education in particular, and for diverse women, this is the place for you. We have an innovative team. We have a lot of excitement happening right now. Our chancellor's just been on fire lately, doing all kinds of regional events with our alumni, and really seeing the level of engagement on a really upward trajectory. So we're excited. Love to have new talent on the team. We have frontline fundraiser positions, director, senior director level positions in the colleges and also in major gifts. And then we'll be hiring some donor experience officers very soon.
There we go. All right. Love to hear that. Tell me about the partnership with your chancellor. When you say the chancellor's on fire, that's a pretty cool description. I mean, how do you really make the most of that relationship? And I'm sure, ideally every donor would like to meet one-on-one with the chancellor, and that's not viable. So how do you most strategically partner to maximize the impact given the, all the other things on a chancellor's to-do list?
Yeah, I think we do a really good job of trying to manage her schedule in terms of who she needs to see and when. In fact, we recently hired a new individual who's taken over as sort of her ambassador for Chancellor's Leadership Giving. Oh. So he really helps manage her schedule and really focuses his portfolio on her major gifts and initiatives. And so that's really helped me as we move forward with this new structure and moving into the public phase of the campaign. And it's been a great addition so far. This has just been a few months, but really excited about it moving forward, certainly. But she's been great. She has an open door. In fact, her door is probably too open. And so our constituents really expect to have a lot of face time with her. And so it's really trying to manage all of that so we can be realistic, right?
Can I ask how much of that? We're recording this in late February of 2023, and one of the really interesting kind of dynamics that we saw over the last few years was how the pandemic was a forcing function to get better at digital engagement and digital communication in general. And we heard of a lot of neat instances where chancellors who in the past you might have had to work for a month to get on their schedule to get them on the plane to go to the thing to meet the person, and it was really complicated, we're able to just like pop on a quick Zoom call, be really personalized, have a nice chat, but 25 minutes in and out versus 2 days. Now we're now seeing like every airline having record bookings and every hotel being at capacity because we're in this sort of travel surge that is happening right now. And some of that is happening for sure in the world of advancement after less of that during a period. Like, where do you find things settling out for your chancellor or even for yourself? I mean, is it basically back to the way that it was before, or does it feel like things are different now?
Things are certainly different.
Okay.
I don't expect anything to be the same as it was, pre-pandemic, certainly. Obviously everyone had to learn all the tools, for Zoom and all of these virtual meetings. And that continues. I think in terms of introductory meetings, in terms of, like you said, schedules. So I think what it has done, it has created even a busier schedule, in fact, because we're doing a lot of both every single day. So I would say I spend my days half the time in virtual meetings and the other half the time one-on-one in personal, either in a one-on-one individual meeting. Yeah. So I'm finding my days are longer. During the pandemic, they would run into 8, 9 o'clock at night, and I don't see that changing for a while. It's just, it's a lot, but it is. I think it's more productive.
I agree completely, and I think the kind of half and half is probably a pretty good way to rebalance. I think that there's just so much that is so much more efficient in this manner, that isn't quite as fun as, or quite as fulfilling as the 100% in person, but it gets you 80% of the way there with 2% of the effort. And then obviously you've got to be strategic about when it really makes sense to get in the car or on the train or in the plane. And I just see that, especially within that chancellor or the dean type level, where the difference between like getting them scheduled versus can you pop into the Zoom for 15 minutes? It's pretty amazing how much simpler and frictionless it can be. But I do worry still that maybe as time passes, maybe the pre-pandemic habits or strategies or tactics come back stronger.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like you all are finding a nice balance.
Yeah, and for us, it's just so convenient because we have 3 campuses and we're spread out so far geographically. We're in Denton and Dallas and Houston, and so it's just been so much easier, more efficient, I guess. You can't beat the in person. I mean, there's no question.
No, you can't. You just can't do that much of it. So that is the trade-off.
Yeah.
Very cool. And the other thing that struck me, and you can speak to it a little bit. It sounds like there's a lot of momentum around this, but just there's so much pressure around the ROI of higher education. And it seems like you all have just an incredible story of how income production changes, and you've already hinted at the demographics of the student population, but it just sounds really, really exciting.
It is.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if folks want to get in touch with you, I know you're active on LinkedIn. That's usually the best way, but any other recommendations?
No, that sounds great. Just let me know.
All right. Well, I would encourage everybody to reach out to Kimberly. She's on LinkedIn, active. We're going to get you connected to your counterpart over there at North Texas and make sure he knows that it was a classroom coincidence that sort of launched your whole story here, which is super cool. And wish you all the absolute best as you continue to ramp for the 125th, and appreciate your willingness to share your journey with our audience.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Brent.
Thanks, Kimberly. Have a great weekend. Take care.
Okay. You too. Bye.